Okay, I think we're getting there. I wanted to try to do some illustrations today, musical illustrations. If I had my daughter here, it would be easier. But I didn't want to just throw something at Pastor, not knowing your sight reading ability at the piano. So, all right. So we are in our second week here. We're started a new lesson, new section, series on Christian worldview. And I introduced this topic last week, and then having conversations with some people afterwards, I wanted to do just a little review. And I mentioned last week that we might take some rabbit trails or go down some rabbit holes or whatever the analogy is we want to use. There's plenty of room for a lot of them, but I wasn't sure which ones we'd go down. Well, then I decided this week to go down one. But I think it'll be helpful for clarification. So that's why I wanted to do this this week. And then I hemmed and hawed all week about how to best put this together. So we'll see what happens, see if it works. So we talked about, we're going to go through some introductions and definitions. We're going to do more of that today. I did mention last week a homework assignment to read through the book of Proverbs. Was anybody able to read through the book of Proverbs this week? All right, we got a couple honest people. All right, well, you've got another chance. For those of you who missed it, you've got another week. And those of you who read last week, you can read it again. You'll just be better off than everyone. You'll be wiser than the rest of the group. But if you can, I strongly encourage you to read through the book of Proverbs for next Sunday. Now the 9th is our guest speaker. It looks like he'll have Sunday
school hour. Yeah.
Sunday school hour, so I get a week off. So if we don't get to the fear of the Lord next week, we'll have 2 more weeks to read through the book of Proverbs. Then knowing God, the world order, and imagination, and we'll just work through these. So it'll be more than 5 weeks, but we're just going to kind of work through these things. So by way of clarification this week, what I wanted to do is look at a little bit more this relationship between worldview, Christian worldview, and culture. Now, worldview is, I defined it here as all the beliefs one has about the perceived world. And the perceived world is this world around us in which we live. There's the unseen world around us, which we know through Scripture exists, but our world, we don't, unless God breaks into our world, we don't know, we're not in contact with that world. So the world that we're around, sometimes called the phenomenological world. Culture, so worldview is what we think about the world, and as we go through this, I'm going to tweak that definition, but it's what we think about the world as we approach it. We assume certain things to be true about the world in order for us to live in the world, in order for us to function. When you study culture, culture is the outworking of that worldview. It's what we can see. And so when we look at a culture, we can identify what their worldview is in some circumstances. And when you go to another culture and you have what's called culture shock, that's when your view of what your beliefs about the world and how it should work run into somebody else's view about the world and how it should work, and they conflict with each other. So how many of you have ever had culture shock? You've gone someplace and you can say, yeah, I've had that awkward feeling. Cool, really? You've had culture shock? It's like every day. And I've been in a variety of places here, and this is just one example that it took me a while to figure this out. I mentioned this example to someone. When I was in Romania, I'm raised in the United States, and as a young man, I'm raised to hold the door open for a woman. or to allow her to go first through a door. That's how I'm raised. That's a good thing. And so I go over to Romania, and I try to help someone, a woman, to go through a door first. She wouldn't do it. Well, that's rude. Well, no, it wasn't rude. And I'm thinking, okay, so she's not rude. She's not a woman's liber who's like, no, you can go through a door just as easily as I can. You know, it's none of that. So what is going on? Why? I mean, she was laughing at me. Okay, she thought this was comical. I'm like, why is this comical? That I would hold the door open for her. Okay, or let her go through the door first. So there was a little bit of culture shock. They're trying to figure that out. So the culture it works out. It's what we can see that helps us. The realization I put here of worldview. It's allows us to see what someone thinks about the world. Now I tried to highlight folk culture, but I don't know if that worked. But I wanted to talk a little bit today about folk culture. We're going to hit these different folk, high culture, and popular culture throughout in different places. I'm not going to walk systematically through them, but I wanted to illustrate this relationship between worldview and culture by means of folk culture. Now, folk culture is defined as a localized form of culture, usually based on long-standing regional traditions. And we mentioned some of these last time, but I thought, well, let's spend a little bit more time. So, and so I've got a couple of examples, and I have at least three questions that are raised by these examples. We might not answer those questions today, but part of having a conversation is knowing the right question to ask. So we'll do that today. Okay, does that help? Did I muddy the waters at all? Trying to help us understand this. Okay, so let's look at folk culture a little bit more detail. The word folk is an old German word, not old German word, it's a German word, that means of the people. Okay, so you know the car, Volkswagen? Okay, Volkswagen, spelled with a V, but it's pronounced like an F. A Volkswagen means a people cart. Okay, it's a cart that moves people, a wagon that is designed for people. That's a Volkswagen. So that's why the German car manufacturing company, that's where they got their name. T.S. Eliot defines culture this way. He says, the way of life of a particular people living together in one place. And you'll notice, and he will also add to that one language, okay, a common language. So later after this definition, but so it's a particular people who live in one place and speak one language. That's kind of the basis of culture. Culture just simply arises out of that. You have a bunch of people who live in one place and speak one language. As an aside, and not as a rabbit trail will go down, you recall the story of the Tower of Babel, where languages were mixed up. So when you look at human civilization across the globe, there are three civilizations in particular that are the oldest. And when I say civilizations, I mean we find them with architecture, literature, engineering of their cities, like city planning. We find them fully civilized. And there are three. Any guesses on the three? Does anyone know what the three are? They're about the same age. What? China is one.
Like Mesopotamia?
There is one in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians, who are on a little bit farther east than the Ur of Chaldees, but over the Red Sea and Aqaba, is it the Gulf of Aqaba? It's on the other side, over there, and Egypt. Very good. Joseph got 2 out of 3. Would you like to help yourself to another piece of bread, or banana bread, or zucchini bread, whatever? All right, so those three, and they're about the same age. in their history, and which I find rather interesting because China is so far away. Okay, but we have civilization. Anyway, we have people of one language living in one place, and it's their way of life, and culture arises out of this. And full culture often includes things like the arts, customs, religious beliefs, but it's not the sum of all those things. It's more than just that. But often when we look at culture and try to understand it from this perspective, we look at those things as almost symbolic of. Until you go to another culture and live there, so especially like, Koo and Wilson and Nellie, who moved from someplace and came here, you don't begin to understand the worldview behind the culture. So we're just voyeurs in that respect. In other words, if you go eat sauerkraut this afternoon for lunch, or you go eat a taco at Taco Bell, you are not becoming, culturalized in the, you're not learning anything about those cultures. Don't kid yourself. But this is kind of what we look at. So this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to compare two cultures today. Hopefully we have time to go through this and raise some questions by these two cultures. So the first one is German folk culture. And I've only been to Germany once, but I studied German in high school, German language in high school, and we would have German fest days, and we had a German restaurant in Illinois that we would go to called the Ratskeller and stuff like that. But being in Germany is different than being an American studying the German language. But this is often what we think about, right? So here's dress. This is how they wear their clothes. And now, of course, they don't wear them this way today. This is more the folk tradition of their clothes in a particular region of Germany, by the way, because you have northern and southern Germany, which are quite different. Old Bavaria, which is in southeast Germany, is much different than up by Berlin, for example. But you have their traditional clothing. You have traditional food. This is a bratwurst with sauerkraut and mustard, not peanut butter, mustard. On a roll. Breakfast in Germany is usually like hard rolls. It's not, it's not exciting by American standards, usually. But you have to like your breads if you live. And Randy, I don't know where they're at with gluten-free. Sorry. You might just starve if you go there. You have to live off of chocolate or something. This is a street in Nuremberg. I actually was here. This isn't my picture, but I was at this location when I was in Germany. And this architecture that you see here is about 500 to 600 years old. The city of Nuremberg is about 1,000 years old, and the old part of Nuremberg. And this architecture is about 500 years old, and this became very traditional in Germany for hundreds of years. This style. The markets, all of your businesses are on the ground floor, and then all of your housing is up above. So each different color is a different person's house. So you kind of see the different browns and then the orange, and then that's all different people's houses that took place. So we kind of think of the architecture. I thought this was interesting. This is a hand-painted plate and glazed, and found quite a few of these, and of course the Norwegians have this tradition as well. There's other cultures that have the same tradition of prettying the plate, and there's all different kinds of art that go along with that. And German, we also have Märchen stories. This Märchen book is a fairy tale book, a book of fairy tales. And we get a lot of our fairy tale stories from Germany, not just the Grimm fairy tales, which are grim, but we get a lot of others as well. And so we get literature. So we also get literature from Germany. We also get music. So this is where we're going to try to play sound, and we'll see what happens. This is what we're going to try. So, and so do you have the speakers up, and then we'll see if it works? Okay. This is an old German folk song. You don't have to understand the words. It is in German. Okay, that was just a snippet. And then I have another German folk song, which you might understand. Couldn't stop in the middle of the verse, so
Please don't.
we had to let that one go. All right. Now the first German song was traditional folk song, sung in German. It was not a hymn for the church. Now Bach took this traditional German folk song and included it in his St. Matthew's Passion and wrote it as a German chorale, which then became a congregational hymn in the Lutheran Church. So that song is well over 400 years old. Yes?
So, if Bach takes something from folk culture and develops it into high culture in St. Matthew's Passion, what do we end up with?
Well, that's a question for another day.
Okay.
But I will point this out. Did you, in all of the German illustrations that I gave, which were all mostly hundreds of years old, for folk culture, what stood out to you about all of those things? The dress, the architecture, the clothing, the music, food, whatever that's worth. Anything stand out to you about any of those things, or all of them together? Jeremiah?
They're similar causes, but slightly different variations from the same kind of stuff in other countries.
Okay, so they're similar to other countries? Variations, but similar to?
They're accessible. It's not too hard to get there. I'm not saying I could do any or all of those. Well, I can eat a broad. I'm not saying I could be good at any or all of those things, but most people could end up being able to do one of those things pretty easily, pretty well in their life.
Sure, so as far as the pastor was saying that things are accessible, you could see, for example, even the woman's dress, I'm afraid if I go back I'm going to mess something up, but in the woman's dress, could you say, is that something, like my daughter Sophia makes clothes. Now she makes British clothes from the 13th century, not German clothes from the 15th century, but 16th century. But you could say, could someone make that? I mean, what would be the level of difficulty if you grew up as a little girl with a needle and thread and thimble, how hard would it be for you to make that? Now, this is embellished, so it's made more than just plain everyday clothes, but it's pretty close to everyday clothes. I think just the flowers and the bodice work are probably extra. But that kind of thing is kind of accessible. Okay, pastor can make a bratwurst, right?
No, I can eat it.
And you can eat the bratwurst. You can cook, you have to make your own sausage. Okay, that's a process. But some people in here do make their own sauerkraut. So, that's part of the thing. The architecture. But like here, even the plate and decorating those things, not everyone's going to be able to decorate it the same way or to the same ornamentation, but you could see that people, if they had free time, that's the key, we mentioned last week, if they have free time, that they can continue to improve and embellish these things. So yeah, these are things that are made by the common person for, in most cases, everyday use, common use. And the same is true with the music. Any other observations? I am going to point one out on purpose. Would you consider her dress to be modest or immodest?
Very modest.
Okay. His clothes, okay, I don't think grown men should wear shorts, but, lederhosen, whatever. I don't know that I would ever wear lederhosen. You'll notice in the music, and of course in Bach's music, obviously he adopted it for the church. And Jeremiah pointed out that there are similarities. So one of the things I thought about doing was playing music from, say, from Russia, Romania, Hungary, Germany, France, Spain, Britain. You can even go to Scotland or Ireland, and show that there's differences. A good hymnal, you can actually do this. There are differences, but there's also some similarity through all of them. So what is the similarity through most of Western Europe over the last 2,000 years?
Christian themes.
Okay, Christianity. So there is actually quite a bit in the German culture that comes out of Christianity. There are similarities through Western Europe in their culture because of the influence of Christianity. Now, if you can find some old Norwegians, they'll even talk about when Christianity came to Norway. And the Sons of Norway used to put on a thing talking about that winter, that Christmas, famous Christmas story when the evangelists came over the mountains in a blizzard to bring the gospel to the Norwegians, and they left their pagan ways. So that's a very fascinating story. It's unfortunately lost a lot of its significance today, but they talk about when that happened. They were influenced by Christianity. So there's a sense in which a lot of the Western European culture was influenced by Christianity for well over 1,000 years, and that had an effect on it. So this raises a question. Well, similar to Pastor's question, which maybe we'll get to someday. But it raises a question. Okay, so Christianity came through Europe, and it changed all these pagan cultures, and it changed the way they thought about the world. It changed their worldview and Christianized their worldview. Okay, so that they shared a Christian worldview. And of course, this was also exported to South America and Central America and other places as well. United States is a little iffy. No, to the United States as well, and Canada. Eventually gets exported almost all around the world because of the British Empire. Okay, so what do we do then with the question of what can be taken from that pagan culture and quote unquote Christianized? Or one of the ways the question is asked is, can it be redeemed? Can we redeem that and for the sake of Christianity? So, okay. All right, so here's a question. Speaking of German culture, what is this? Okay, someone whispered a Christmas tree. What? God? Decorated pine tree? There are lit candles on it, so that probably makes it a fire hazard. Yeah. Right. No. So you know what the German word is for the Christmas tree?
It's up here somewhere.
Okay, so Tannenbaum. Oh, Tannenbaum is the name of the song that you probably learned how to sing in German in high school. Those of us who are older. I don't know if you young kids have had to learn it. But when I was in grade school, we had to learn O Tannenbaum in German, which is an ode to the tree of Weihnachten, of Christmas season, but it's not, there's nothing in it about Christmas. Okay, it's just a song about the tree. Now, there is some debate, I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail very far, but there is some debate between Christians, and I know well-meaning Christians, who would not have a Christmas tree in their home because of the pagan association to the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree had pagan roots, that when Christianity moved into Germany, they kept the tradition of the Christmas tree and they gave to it a Christian understanding. Okay, they changed the meaning of the tree. We go from a pagan tradition to a Christian tradition. So one of the things that studying the culture does is helps us to raise questions like this. Well, what can we take out of culture and redeem or Christianize, and what can't we? So does anyone have any strong feelings about Christmas trees?
I hate decorating.
Yeah, you hate decorating them? I don't know, I always enjoyed decorating. Kind of the undecorating that was the task. All right, so that's the question. I'm not going to answer the question. But this is the question that it raises. From a Christian worldview, should we adopt something like the Christmas tree, or should we not adopt the Christmas tree, or the Tannenbaum? What can we adopt, and what should we not adopt? What is teaching Christian truth, and what is not teaching, or what is teaching something contrary to Christian truth? Because worldview is about what we believe about the world. And if we would come to the conclusion that the Christmas tree cannot teach Christian truth, or it teaches something opposing Christian truth, then we would say we need to leave it out of our culture. Okay, so I'm not saying that's my conclusion. I'm just saying that that's the question. Now, to help us with that question, we're going to go to the other side of the world, to Papua New Guinea. So, south of Thailand, for those of you who are good with your geography. But I spent quite a bit of time in Papua New Guinea, and I wanted to show you a culture that, for the large part, was never Christianized. Okay, and show you the difference, because we live in such a culture that, broadly speaking, that has been Christianized. So, Papuan folk culture, and the word Papua means curly-haired. Papuan folk culture is quite different, okay? I had a hard time finding pictures of people who were dressed at all, let alone were dressed enough that I could show them on a screen. Okay, so here, this is not their everyday dress. This is men who are dressed for war, or they're really probably just dressed for the camera. These men in front, especially the man who's right in front, those are bones that are sticking out of his nose. And they're usually made out of pig tusks. The braided part that goes down the center of his chest are shells, and that is what was the currency in Papua New Guinea. They call it kina, and it's the word for shell. And if you have a lot of kina, you have a lot of shells, you've got a lot of money. Okay, so he's very wealthy. So is the man on his right, on our left, his right. You can see that his shells go all the way up, and he has a very large pig tusk coming around the front there. So this man is also very wealthy. And so here's a culture not Christianized. Their dress is to show power. Their dress is to show wealth. Their dress is to intimidate, if they wear anything at all. Like I said, in most cases, they don't. That's very different. Now, this is their food. And I grabbed this picture because my wife and I were in New Guinea in '96, and we were in a village that looked very much like this. And we stayed in a hut that's very much like the one behind here. And this is the food. This is what's called a mumu, or a feast. Kind of what we call like a potluck, you know. But all the food's cooked in the ground. And this is mostly just vegetables here. You see how these people are dressed? They have been Christianized. It's also very possible, and I'll show you, I think I have another picture. They might even actually be Baptists, but the women who have come to Christ are actually very modest in their dress and in the clothes that they make. Much more modest than Americans. No offense to the women in this room, but you meet some Papuans who have come to Christ who once wore no clothes and now are dressed and sitting in their right mind, and their modesty will put you to shame. Here's a hut, here's architecture for you. In one place, they have different architecture depending on where you're at, but this was a lot like a hut that I've stayed in, my wife and I stayed in. Everything's woven grass, or woven leaves. Not terribly comfortable. This is some artwork. This is a mask. If you go to Papua New Guinea, you can find masks just about anywhere. It's very popular art, but the masks are all have demonic symbolism, and they are very much used in demon worship. Now they'll sell them because, hey, why not get some money for them from the white guys? But this would be one that is representing actually a series of demons. And this one's actually quite large. Most of them are smaller and not quite. This one was made to be sold, put it that way. Probably was never used. Then we have a song. Now, I only have, I want to say maybe 8 seconds. This is a very short clip.
What timing?
Yeah.
5, 6, 7.
Yeah. We gotta wait for the short. Okay.